And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Hi, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska aviation weather outlook on this Tuesday, July 2nd. And this forecast will be for the midweek period, Wednesday, July 3rd, and then Thursday, July 4th. And by the time we get into Wednesday morning, we are in the midst of a pattern change after a period of drier and warmer weather across much of the state, particularly the mainland. We're going to see that breaking down. It's going to become wetter and cooler, and this pattern will likely persist for potentially the next couple of weeks. But the changeover, this pattern change, will be quite notable here as we go through this midweek, Wednesday into Thursday. So here by Wednesday morning, we have IFR conditions along the Arctic coast down through the Bering Strait, across much of the Bering Sea. Frontal system out this way is going to be pushing inland with abundant moisture. And as of Wednesday morning, dry conditions are anticipated in most areas here of the interior along the Alaska Range, Yukon Flats. Still, there could be some lingering very high fire danger through this area to start out. But we are going to see rain moving in from west to east. And by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, generally MVFR conditions around the Gulf and Panhandle, though there could be some IFR conditions there near and as you get inland a bit from Yakutat. Further west, though, IFR conditions continue along just off the Arctic coast down to around Point Hope, Kivalina through the Bering Strait, and then out across much of the Bering Sea through the central western Aleutians. And notice the MVFR conditions here in through the Yukon Valley, middle Yukon Valley to the Brooks Range. By the time we get into Thursday morning, though, we're going to see areas of rain and rain showers, certainly moderate rain in some cases, even locally on the heavier side. So conditions will be deteriorating here as we go into Thursday across the interior. But one good aspect of this pattern change is it's going to help knock down the fire threat significantly, and it's also going to knock down existing fires. We've had a lot of smoke across the interior for the past week. That's beginning to break down as these winds come on in. It's going to help scour out that smoke and at least, I think, improve visibilities here as we go through, especially the latter half this week into the weekend. But we could still see some IFR conditions, northern Panhandle up around Haines, Skagway, Chilkoot and White, areas around Yakutat Bay, but extensive IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, creeping into the western Brooks Range down along all the west and southwest coast, the YK Delta, Seward Peninsula. And for Thursday afternoon, we continue to have that moist flow coming in off the Bering Sea, Chukchi Sea, so we expect lower ceilings and some areas of fog and rain. But as this precipitation pushes inland, MVFR, Thursday afternoon, all up here through the Yukon River Valley, there could be some isolated pockets of IFR as well in those areas. But just taking a look at the past conditions, Anaktuvik Pass for Wednesday will be MVFR, as will Adigan Pass there in the east central portion of the Brooks Range. As we drop down southwestward, at least during the day on Wednesday, VFR conditions will be the rule across most of the Alaska Range. May briefly be MVFR around Rainy Pass Wednesday morning, but otherwise VFR. Same thing as we round up through the central Alaska Range. Windy Pass VFR, VFR through Isabel and Metasta passes as we drop southward. Tanita Pass may push into some MVFR conditions from moisture coming up from the south there by evening. And generally, Portage Pass during the day on Wednesday should have MVFR conditions. It may be a little more toward VFR on the west entrance, but certainly the central and eastern portion of the pass will be MVFR. And then the far northern end of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White will see IFR conditions becoming MVFR on Wednesday. So freezing levels aloft, at least midweek Wednesday. We do have some ridging, so we find the dome of warmer air aloft extending from the western Bering all the way across the southwest into the central interior and back into northwest Canada, the Yukon, Northwest Territories. There is some colder air to the north that is going to brush areas of the North Slope and along the Arctic coast. When I say colder air, I mean cooler temperatures. Overall, with the cloud cover and precipitation that'll be working its way eastward across the mainland interior here as we go through Wednesday and Thursday, is going to keep temperatures considerably cooler than what they have been. There's a pocket of at least lower Freezing levels aloft below 6,000 feet out here southwest of the Gulf, south of the Alaska Peninsula, associated with an area of low pressure. And then with precipitation, lower ceilings, the rain, we find the potential for icing, though, on Wednesday still above 12,000 feet here through the Yukon Valley, maybe downward around 8,000 feet as you get nearer and north of the spine of the Brooks Range to the Arctic coast, and then an area of considerable icing potentially here out through the central Aleutians, but rather high, above 16,000 feet, generally above, well above the levels that general aviation fly. And as we look at the wind pattern, we have the jet stream level 30,000 feet. There's a piece of energy coming in, wave, that'll be working its way across northern parts of the state. And we have a circulation, low pressure circulation, southwest of the Gulf, backside of it, 150 knot winds. But this is more important, looking at the mid-level winds, kind of the steering winds. We have at 9,000 feet, 700 millibars, west-northwest winds across a broad area of the central northern interior, anywhere from 45 to as high as 55 to 60 knots there out toward the panhandle there of the Yukon. And then back out here toward the Bering Sea, there's a broad area of generally westerly winds, 35 to 40 knots, with a core around 45 to 55 knots there near and just southwest of the western Aleutians. And then as we bring this down to 3,000 feet, certainly within the levels of general aviation, we find along the Arctic coast 40 to 50 knot west-northwest winds, a belt, this belt of westerly winds pushing into the central interior for Wednesday, bringing in the clouds and precipitation anywhere from 35 to 45 knots, and that train extends all the way back out across the eastern half of the Bering through the central Aleutians and there southwestward. So this is a moisture feed that is coming into first the west side of the state and then spreading throughout the inland interior, especially by the time we get into the 4th of July. So turbulence with this belt of winds, we expect moderate turbulence, rather extensive across the Yukon Valley up into the Yukon Flats, including the Porcupine River and the south side of the Brooks Range. We also have moderate icing along areas of the western North Slope, northwest Arctic coast, down through the Bering Strait, Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, lower portion even of the Yukon Valley, and then back out toward St. Matthew and St. Lawrence Islands. We would expect turbulence there, at least surface to 3,000 feet, and then an area back out toward the central and western Aleutians on Wednesday. There will be moderate turbulence there at surface to 3,000 feet.